speaking, one word that will become very, very commonly used is coincidence and coincidence. And one day I was walking through our intensive care unit in the hospital, where every day, like the thought of the day, they write something on the bulletin board, and they said there, coincidence is a miracle where Almighty wishes to remain anonymous. And it didn't make much sense to me when I read it, but then it so happened the next several months, so many coincidences happened in my life that old Irish proverb started becoming more and more meaningful. This colleague of mine, who is Dr. Tumati, though he's a cardiologist and I'm a cardiac surgeon, we have never met. And we started our jobs, he as the chief of cardiology and I as the director of cardiac surgery, in a hospital in California, halfway across the world from Puttaparthi, having never seen each other before. So that to me is one of the most coincidences you can see. Then we were all both interested in doing service to people, especially in India, because cardiac surgery and cardiology, though is so rampant, is very, very expensive, not within the reach of almost 95% to 97% of the Indian population. So we both always wanted to go and do some service providing cardiac care. But both had very bad experiences because the corporate world that runs 99% of the cardiac surgery in India is absolutely corrupt, and it caters only for the rich, top 2 or 3%. So we got disenchanted. But then one time Tumati had to go for his nephew's wedding. Every Indian wedding runs for 3 days or 5 days, and it's the most confusing thing. Nobody knows who is coming, who is going. And in that confusion, all of a sudden, a stranger that Dr. Tumati has never seen gives him a card that has pictures of two, holy men on each half of this card, and says, look, there is a beautiful super specialty hospital that does free cardiac surgery. You should visit it. And before Tumati realized the gravity of what the man was saying, the man totally disappeared, and he could never find him then or since. And anyway, he took the clue and went to visit this super specialty hospital in Puttaparthi, which was a very rough 8-hour ride for him. But he was able to go there, and then at the same time he even was able to make rounds along with the holy man who runs this hospital, or who is the man behind it from his perspective, which he later found out was Sai Baba. And he made the rounds with him, and he was so impressed. The minute he came back to California, he started bugging me and said, here is your dream, here is your dream. You must go back and see this in a hospital. And I said, what hospital is this? And he said, oh, it does free cardiac surgery. And I said, Ramakrishna is his name. I said, Ramakrishna, free cardiac surgery is an oxymoron. You and I have traveled all over the world. We know how expensive cardiac surgery is, and free cardiac surgery is an oxymoron statement. And he wouldn't let go. And then again, at the same time, you wouldn't believe another coincidence. They had their regional, or what we call national, cardiothoracic and vascular surgeons of India had an international meeting, and I was asked to participate in it because I was one of the what we call NRIs, non-resident Indians, and they also wanted to recognize some of us who are non-resident Indians. And that's how I ended up going to Hyderabad, and from there I went to Bangalore. And from Bangalore, it's a short, car ride to Puttaparthi. So, of course, my interest was only in the hospital, and first thing I visited was the hospital only. And from outside, you look at it, and now you know why people call it a temple of healing. It's not just called a super specialty hospital. It's one of the most arresting buildings that I have ever seen that could be a hospital. And then inside again, it was astonishing to see how clean it is, how calm it is, how clutterless it is, and how people are going about doing their business. And one of the junior administrators was nice enough to be able to take me around and show me the whole hospital. And the most surprising thing was the equipment they have, though it's a free hospital, is totally state of the art, something that I'm used to working in United States. So it was so compelling that I said, oh, this is the place that I should work. This is the place I should work. But then, of course, all around looking, you see, Swami's pictures. And then, of course, I realized this must be the man, behind it. Then we went into the ashram. Of course, the ashram is another different life totally. Once you are inside the compound wall of the ashram, everything again is very predictable, very orderly. And then next day morning, we were in the darshan line, and another biggest coincidence again was that I ended up sitting in the front line. I have no idea how I ended up there, and I was in the front line, and my nephew next to me said, "Uncle, if you pray to your favorite God that you always meditate or pray on, Swami will speak to you." And I got a little laugh and I said, "Listen, there are about 10,000 people here. You think Swami is going to speak to me?" He said, No, uncle, you pray and meditate and concentrate, and Swami will speak to you." So of course, our family deity is Lord Balaji, Mahavishnu, and I'm used to meditating, I'm used to praying every day. So the next thing I know, there was this beautiful music, and Swami was gliding down, and I opened my eyes, and he was standing right in front of me, staring into my eyes. And of course, once you ever lock your vision with, Swami, you are never the same. And then, of course, I blurted out and I said, "Swami, I am Dr. Choudary from Los Angeles." And he gave one of those beautiful, smiles and said, yes, I know who you are. And of course, then he materialized some vibhuti for me. And before I realized, he was gone. And I thought that was so beautiful. But that wasn't the end of it. After the darshan, the next thing I know, there was this man running to me and said, "Oh, Swami wants to see you." I said, "Oh my goodness, that's even better." So I went, and they opened this beautiful, nice wooden, ornate kind of a door, and literally pushed me into this room and closed the door. It's a very small room, maybe about 10 feet by 10 feet, 10 feet by 12 feet, and there I was, and there was Swami at the other end. And the other thing that's a coincidence of all coincidences is I speak the same language that Swami speaks, Telugu, because I was born only 100 miles from Puttaparthi. And then, of course, the rest is really nothing but history, and only way Swami can orchestrate that history. Now, I have to digress a little bit here because I was talking about coincidences. Like I said, I was in Hyderabad for this international cardiac surgical meeting, and I asked a few cardiologists and cardiac surgeons about this super specialty hospital that does free heart surgery. It was amazing to find out that half of them didn't know about this hospital. The other half that knew about the hospital said, "Oh yeah, there's a hospital there, but it's going to close in an year or two because you know how expensive it is to do heart surgery." That was dampening a little bit my spirits to go there. Then the other amazing coincidence is this boyhood friend of mine who was in Bangalore, who is arranging all this thing for me, said, "Oh, just come over, we'll send you to Puttaparthi." So that morning he was very busy, so I started traveling to Puttaparthi with his wife and son. Then when I'm pushed into this interview room and the door closes, the most amazing thing was there is this 5'3" person with a big halo of hair and one of the most beautiful smiles you can ever see, and suddenly looks at me. And like I said, one of the coincidences, like I said earlier, was we speak the same language. And he looks at me. This is the first time I have ever seen him, at least my perspective wise, and I thought the same first time he ever saw me. He looked at me, and the very first words he said were in Telugu. He said, how come you lost weight? And that is like, not just what he said, the way he said it, with so much love in what he said. And I just literally was shaken, because 6 weeks before I started this trip, I developed a very bad tooth abscess. And if you're a physician in the United States, you get extra attention and everybody wants to help you. So they started putting temporary filling that fell off, and then they put one more temporary filling that fell off, and there was a huge cavity in my tooth, and they said, oh, you can't go to India, because if you get infected, you get infection in the jawbone, and that's a big deal. And I said, no way, this is something I have to do. So they gave me a contrivance to clean my mouth and the tooth every time I ate something. So for 6 weeks I was on soups, and and sure enough I lost about 10 pounds. But unless somebody you're working with me, you will never know. You look at somebody for the first time, and how could you tell? So when he looked at me, which I assumed so far at my own limited perception, that first time I saw him, first time he's seeing me, and when he said, how come you lost weight, I just literally broke down. And then of course he calmly said, don't worry, the tooth is going to be fine. Of course that's the icing on the cake, and I couldn't recover myself. Really could not recover myself. And then I realized that what's going on is not something ordinary, and there is this person that can look through somebody and know everything about that somebody, past, present, future, of not this one life, probably many, many previous lives. That was the impression I had. And the next thing, he was very direct, and he said, what do you want? And now I know that's his characteristic way of asking everybody, what do you want? And I said, Swami, I want peace. And his answer to that was very simple. He said, take I away, take want away, and what is left behind. And I said, Swami, peace. He said, you see, it's very simple. Of course, I didn't have any clue what he was telling. Of course, it took me about 10-12 years after that to realize what exactly he said. And because my limited perception was that he's going to give me some secret somewhere, a book to read, or a prayer to pray to get peace. But the way he said, take I away and take one away, and you are left with peace, is like a mathematical equation. So I let it go by, because I wasn't really impressed at that point. And then I came to the issue that was forefront in my mind and said, Swami, I want to work in your hospital. And immediately he had a big smile on his face, and he said, oh, don't worry, this is your hospital, you can come whenever you want to come, you can do as much work as you want to do. And he also said that we'll have, apart from the 2 existing operating rooms, we'll have 1 more room, and you can do, it's your hospital, no problem. And that's exactly what I was looking for and what I wanted to hear. And of course that's the beginning of this journey. And my own human thinking was that I was going there and doing service to people. That's what I wanted to do all my life. But I never did realize that that was only like a very minor part of the whole picture. Rest of the picture is that every trip I made there, it was for my benefit, for my understanding of my own self, to look inside and slowly look inside, and then understand, or at least try to understand, who I am, what I am here for, what my priorities are. And with the help of Swami, every trip has been a lesson. And then, like I said, it took me 10-12 years to realize what is getting rid of that I and what is getting rid of that want, and how when you do that you have no choice except to end up with peace. At this juncture, I should tell you a little bit about the hospital itself. Like I alluded earlier, it's called the Temple of Healing. I had the privilege of meeting the architect, Mr. Kirchlov, and how Swami, with his what we call Vajra Sankalpa, something he wishes it will happen, built this hospital within exactly 12 months. And when I spoke to Professor Kirchlov, he happens to be the Dean of Prince of School of Architecture, Prince of Wales, School of Architecture. And he told me that it took them about close to 7 months, 15 architects to draw the plans for the hospital, and only 5 months was left for this Indian construction company to finish this 300,000 square foot of hospital space. Building a house is very easy. Building a hospital is very complex. You have so many restraints, so many constrictions, and so many policies to follow, because you have critical care areas, you have operating rooms, you have access from, say, substerile to sterile area, and the flow, everything has to be so meticulously planned. Just to give you an idea, we run cardiac surgery is always done in a tertiary specialty hospital, and our group, they were interested in building another tertiary hospital, and it took us 3 years just to get plans approved. And Professor Kirchlov himself confessed that in any industrial country, whether it is Germany, whether it is United States, UK, this hospital would have taken 7 years to be completed. But if you look into the history, in November 22nd of 1990, Swami proclaimed that exactly 1 year from now, in that barren land of 110 plus acres, there would be a super specialty hospital, and on the very first day they would do heart surgery. True to his word, they not only just did 1 but 4 open heart surgeries, and this hospital was really built in 5 months construction time and a whole year, and that itself is a miracle. Now, how you explain it, it's all in your own way of understanding it, and we generally call it as inspirational energy. That's the way that Swami inspires people. You put in 150% of your energy. Now, when you look at the hospital, it has a central dome and then 2 wings on either side. The way the whole concept was that when the patient walks in, he literally walks into the bosom of Swami and gets into his embrace. Now, people always ask me, how did you change? What did you learn from Swami? How do you practice different now since you are exposed to Swami? You see, especially in the Western society, medicine is practiced in a very different way. What I mean by that is, you have a system that is layered and mostly bureaucratic, because it's paid by an insurance company. But it works very well, but you could almost go and call it an impersonal system, because all you are interested is the patient has his insurance, and the insurance has its ability to pay, which is what it was, at least when I started coming to Swami. But in the Eastern society, it's very different. Majority of the people cannot afford serious cardiac surgery business, and that's how Swami started this hospital. But this concept that I'm going to explain now, which was put forward to me from Swami himself as early as 1993, is, he said, you cannot treat the patient as a disease. There are 3 aspects to every patient. His physical ailment, his mental ailment, and his soul, which is the seat of his entire personality. You have to treat all three of them. Of course, this concept is totally alien even to me with my Eastern background. But when Swami said that that's how you should do, my whole approach to medicine has really became different. I mean, even otherwise, I was always a very God-fearing person. Even in the Western world, I would tell them an oft quote of mine is, man cuts and God heals, which I strongly believed in. For a cardiac surgeon, it's very difficult to come forth with that kind of a statement because we have so much ego. We feel that we do everything and, we are the God's gift to mankind in a way. Majority of us do feel that way, but I always had this little bit of humility, I would say a little bit, to accept that man cuts but God heals. But once I got exposed to Swami, this philosophy of treating patient as a whole entity, it's not just a disease, it's just not a number. We always have codes for each disease in the United States. But with Swami's blessings, I realized that you don't treat it as a code, you treat the patient, his disease, and then his mental makeup, and then his soul, or whatever you want to call it in any different ways. So much so that when the patient walks into this hospital, the first place he comes into is a central dome. That is a marvelous architectural piece. It's about 140 feet tall, and there's a 20-foot tall chandelier weighing a little over 2 tons hanging in. And there is so much serenity, there is so much peace. The patient walks in, and I always felt that the first impression a patient gets out of a hospital goes a long way in treating him or getting the most benefit. And number 2, you look anywhere in the hospital, the only most important thing really missing, is a cashier's desk. That's the only way people can say that it is a free hospital. There is no cashier's desk in the hospital. So the patient has absolutely no financial responsibility. And then when he walks in and walks into this ambience, which is so alien to him, he doesn't expect it. He comes into this clean, calm hospital and then gets into this main dome and looks around and then already feels better. This is the concept that Swami put into my own mind, and this is what I try to incorporate into my own teachings, not to treat the patient as a number, but treat the patient as three-sided or three-dimensional approach. Now I am very happy to say in 2003, 2004, 2005, the Western world, actually Western medical society, has finally got a grasp of it, and now almost half the universities or medical school teach spirituality and medicine, really do teach spirituality and medicine. And now if you look at, there are so many, maybe hundreds of studies, double-blind studies that are being done. What is the effect of spirituality? What's the effect of prayer? What's the effect of medicine in the outcome of any procedure that is done to a hospital? So you can see that how far-fetching Swami's teachings were as way back as 1993, when he was telling us that you must combine all these three aspects, and now only the Western society has realized the importance of combining all these three approaches. In mid 80s, they did a study in the entire medical population of United States of America, and they found out only about 50-55% of the practicing physicians actually believed in God. But he said the latest study done in the early 1990s shows that more than 75% of the practicing physicians believe in God. Now you could see that when you look at Swami and his way of practicing medicine, how universal it is. Puttaparthi is a very small town. very small town. This is what that he inculcates in almost everyone that practices in that hospital. That's the other thing, most awakening for me, like a rude awakening, because people who work in that hospital have nothing in common. They come from all over the country, sometimes all over the world. The people from Italy working there, the people from Malaysia working there, people from Ceylon working there, people from Australia working there, obviously people from United States. Within the country of India, there are people from all the states. They don't speak the same language, they don't belong to the same religion, but the common thread they have is the sense of service that Swami has inculcated in them. And that is very, very humbling for somebody like me to go and see how this very fundamental thread of this sense of service to these poor people keeps them all in one page. And at the same time, also everybody knows that when this patient walks into that hospital, that is his last hope. Now, I just want to talk a little bit more about how Swami basically, influenced my own thinking. I alluded earlier about, changing in my practice and all that. I was another, very ordinary guy, enjoyed eating, drinking, meat, eating, and then drinking, alcohol once in a while. But once I got into Swami's fold, I did not realize what people used to say, my life is my message. When Swami said my life is my message, it looks like a very catchy phrase, but when you're exposed to it, you know exactly what he means by my life is my message. He lives the simplest life I have ever seen. I'll give you one simplest example. We were all sitting around him one day, and he always wears the same kind of robes, and there are always 3 or 4 buttons that are buttoned right up to the neck. And he removed one of those buttons and gave it us to look at it. We thought there must be at least gold buttons, if not gold covered. They were not. They were just regular nickel buttons. You could buy a dozen of them for 10 rupees. And that's how he talks when he says, my life is my message. Nobody does anything for him. He does everything for himself. And time is perfect. And then again he says, you must have combination of the 3 things. What you think, what you say, what you do must all be the same. You can't think one way, you can't say the other way, and you can't do the third way, which most of us do. That's the other thing. So now when I say something, even before I say it, I think twice what I'm saying. And then I don't say it unless I actually feel what I'm saying, and I won't say it unless I'm absolutely sure I can execute it also. If you just think of these things, just take a minute and think about these things, it has one of the most farthest fetching implications, because it sounds very easy. He calls it Trikarana Suddhi, the marriage of these 3 aspects of thought, what you say, and what you do. And if there is no harmony between these 3, then there is no sense in one's life. That's basically how I come across with it. Because you see that in every action of Swami, how he does, what he does, what he eats. It's the most basic provisions in life. And he needs very few things, very little he needs. His discipline in all those 3 aspects is so important that if we can practice it, we really, really will be achieving a significant improvement in ourselves as a human being. And the other thing that I have learned from him is there is no room for being a part-time, Swami devotee. You might as well not be a devotee, because you are representing Swami. You are expressing his ideas. You are an example for him. If you cannot be that all your 24 hours, then I don't think there's any need for it. I say it, it's not that I am doing it 100%, but I strive, I still strive. There are a few slip-ups here and there, but I do strive. And that's my request to everybody, do strive. He never wanted you to be a great man. No, no. Swami always says, there's nothing exactly great about being a great man, but there is a lot great about being a good person. That's what he wants us all to be, just a good, person. And then again, this streamlining all happens if we put service ahead of our other things. I think that to me is the other very important lesson I learned from Swami, because I read somewhere, even before I met Swami, service is the rent we pay for living in this world, and I do strongly believe in that. If you cannot help a fellow human being in distress, what's the use of what has God given to you? I mean, I can say it now very easy because I've seen both sides of life. I have seen when the way I was so selfish, looking for money, looking to buy bigger cars. I'll give you one more example which will be it will drive the point home. I always asked for more money when I used to work in a large group. So one day I was driving out of the parking lot in my Mercedes, and the administrator stops by and says, "Choudary, you're driving such a nice car, what do you want more money for?" And my immediate answer was, "Don, I could buy a nicer car." But today he asks me the same thing. I'll tell you, I need more money because I want to do more service to the poor people, needier people, people less fortunate than I am. If all of us can just practice that one thing, I think life would still be a much nicer thing. But that's one thing so good about all these people. We have network of physicians that come from all over the world and work in Swami's hospital. The common thread I see in all of them, talking to them, is their sense of service. They want to serve. I saw people from Scotland, I met people from Australia, and I met people from Austria, people from South America, Italy. They all come, want to serve. That's their main aim, want to serve. Of course, Swami is the magnet. And the other thing that's very interesting is, Swami has never asked anybody to come and work there. Typical example is me. I've never even known him. I didn't have any clue that there was a person like Swami. I went there only for the hospital because I wanted to serve. So if I have to say see, the other thing I want to mention here is this selfless service that we do has so many ripple effects. I'll give you one simple example. They operated on a young girl, about 5 or 6 year old, with a hole in her heart. The father happens to be a truck driver, very poor, and he has no wife because his wife died when her kids were young, and he somehow wanted his daughter to get better. He has no financial way of taking care of it. So he brought her over to the Bangalore hospital, where they have done this whole operation, which normally outside costs about 150,000 rupees very easily. There's no way in his entire 10 lives he could afford something like that. And it was done free. He didn't have any financial commitment. And took her home. He was very happy. Everything was happy. And the most amazing thing was, 6 months afterwards, when he brought her for the doctors to see her in a follow-up, they found one of the most amazing things from this man. He's one of those rough, uneducated people, who drive a truck for a living. He has his usual habits of meat eating, drinking, smoking. That's his way of life. Then apparently, after he went home, he was so moved at the kind of service that was provided to his daughter, free of cost, from people he has never met, from people who he not going to meet again, have no parallel, there is no parity with it. They don't belong to his religion, they don't belong to his region. These people are aliens to him, but still they did everything free to him, and he kept thinking in his own mind, what can I do, what can I do? So you would never believe what he has done is, in the 6 months, he stopped smoking, he stopped drinking, and he stopped eating meat. See how one good deed has such tremendous amount of ripple effects. This is what Swami talks about. one good deed. You do a good deed in sincerity, its effects are so far-fetching. This you see every day in that hospital, because most of the people who come there are free. They come from all over the country, foreign countries also. This is their last resort because they can't afford any of it. And the minute they walk into the hospital and see this ambience and then meet these people that they never know, and they first of all don't believe that it's going to be free. And when they're ready to leave, they're so happy there. And you see these people in the intensive care unit, they're like 3-month-old or 6-month-old. They're so happy. They all have a nice big, vibhuti on their forehead. They're all, smiling. They're all happy. And it's a whole different world. And I think the main force behind all this again is just Swami and Swami's philosophy that, hands that work are better than lips that pray. In a way, many of his sayings are so practical, really so practical. And, service to others is the most important thing. So these are all things that he has, brought out. And again, to practice this, you see, that is his main insistence on all of us. Practice them, practice them day in and day out. You don't have to practice when I'm around only. That's what that makes you a part-time devotee. You cannot be a part-time devotee. You have to be a full-time devotee. So my difficult issue was not just practicing what I was practicing when I'm in Puttaparthi, but put the same principles back into my practice when I went back to United States. It took me a while, but then slowly I started incorporating his teachings and practicing. First I was a little worried that people would not understand, but you'll be very surprised how many people are so comfortable with the thought that there is somebody beyond us. I just call, in the Western country, I just call him the man upstairs. You could call God, you could call man upstairs. But they are so comfortable when you tell them, you don't have the same religious background, you don't practice the same religion, but still I think the common thread is God again. And once that is brought into the picture, everything becomes very, very easy. That's what that Swami tells you. I am a God, you are God. I know that, but you don't know that. But trying to know that, I think that is the beginning. And once you start that inward journey to learn who you are, what that makes you comfortable, how you can be peace at yourself. You can wake up in the morning, look at yourself in the mirror and feel comfortable at what you look at. And that's what Swami helps you to do that. Helps you very much. But you must be willing to take that help and then do it. As you come to know, more and more about Swami, or the way I put it is when you come into his orbit, I don't think it happens just like that. I think it is a process of culmination of what has happened, not just in this lifetime, but many, many, many lifetimes before. One very beautiful example I can relate myself is, I had the fortune of going to Kodaikanal with Swami with 3 other very, very evolved souls. One of them is retired Professor Sampath. And one day it's so fortunate that there were only 4 of us and Swami was standing, and Professor Sampath looked at Swami and said, "Swami, it must be something we have done in this lifetime that we are this close to you, Swami." And Swami looked at him without batting an eyelash and said, "Sampath, not this lifetime, last 100 lifetimes." So it just gives you an idea of meaning of life. That's the first glimpse I had about what this meaning of life is, how cumulative these effects are. God gives you this chance. This is where the biggest question comes. If everything is predestined, what is the free will of man? The way I look at it is, God gives us a patch of land. You can sow in it whatever you want to sow. You can sow a mango tree and reap mangoes. Or you can sow marijuana, or sow and reap that thing. So it's your choice. That's where I think Swami says you can turn the lock to the right or turn the lock to the left. That's your free will. His grace is always there, but you have to use it. And that's, I think, where majority of us, miss the boat. Because you need to use it and use it in the right way. And he also said one time very beautifully, like we say in surgery, so much parallelism from what Swami says and what I find in life in surgery. We always say in surgery, there's no neutral action. When you make a move in surgery, it's either going to benefit the patient or going to hurt the patient. Same way in life, Swami says there is what you call a reaction, reverberation and resounding for everything you do. And one day he was explaining to us that there are 3 kinds of reactions, 3 kinds only. Something you do, for example, you cut your skin, it bleeds right away. This we call, some of the actions you do, there's a very immediate reaction. Then there are other actions like you eat your food. It takes 3-4 hours for it to digest. So some of the actions you make, they be about 3-4 hours before there is an effect of it. Or you sow a seed. It takes 5 years for it to grow and 10 years for it to bear fruit. So some of your actions may take 5 or 10 years to make an effect. But there's always an effect. So the corollary to this is whenever you act, you have to think. And what he says, you think, not that it's good for you. No, that would be the last decision you have to make. The first decision you have to make is it going to be good for everybody involved in the equation? But unfortunately, the way society is today, we think of ourselves. Is my act is going to be good for me, for my family? And that's where the degradation starts. But Swami always says, when you act and decide that it's good for everybody in the equation, not just for you alone. That's selfishness. If you can get out of that selfish mode, then again, what is His grace do for a person? It doesn't make you a millionaire. No. You go to Him to become a millionaire, you're going Him for the wrong reason. I think what He does for you is to be a better person. How do you become a better person? Mada, Moha, Mascharya, Logam, all these qualities are there. We're born with it. We're born with it. Of all these things, to me personally, the 2 most important things to overcome is your anger and your greed and lust. And if you follow Swami's teachings, you can get rid of them. It's not very easy, but you should try. You should try. Because anger is the worst thing. Really, because it destroys you. Anger can slowly destroy you. This is a medical fact. It's not something that I'm talking at a very higher psychological or super psychological level. A practical thing. When you get angry, the worst damage is done to you, not to the other person. The same way, jealousy and greed. It's a very important thing. I always used to be jealous because I worked very hard all my life. If I saw somebody driving a bigger car, a better car than me, I would worry. How come I work so hard and that guy is driving a bigger car? Now when I look at somebody being more prosperous, driving a bigger car or any of that, I automatically feel the guy deserves it. And that gives you a very nice feeling. It's not just that car is comparable to anything, because that's the first thing that comes into my mind. The same way, if I see somebody very religious, doing things for other people, I feel so happy. I used to feel so jealous. Look at this. God has given him so many opportunities to help everybody else. No. God gives all of us opportunities to help others. Some of us take it and some of us don't take it. And that particular person took it and is able to do it. And that's what Swami makes in us. Wakes up that instinct to help the people in need. And if you miss that, you miss the whole boat. The same way, he says, he has come here to metamorphose us, make us better people, really make us better people. His grace is always there. Grace is always there. When he says you, I'm in front of you, above you, behind you, below you, it really is true. I'll tell you one other example about this, which has probably opened my eyes much more. one of my visits was to South America, in Rio, and in the poorest of the slums in Rio, they have a school for Swami. And there I met this very lovely young lady, and she was so involved into Swami's teachings and Swami's school. She's a teacher there. And I asked, when was the last time you saw Swami? And she laughed and she said, I've never even been to India. And I said, you're crazy. You haven't even been to India and you're doing Swami's work here. I said, how do you do this? Where is Swami? What's Swami to you? And she looked up me straight in my eyes and said, Swami is here. You know, I go around saying that, oh my goodness, I'm doing so much work for Swami, I'm curing so many patients. When I heard this lady, so simple and so straightforward and so lovely, saying that Swami is here, you know, I'm doing Swami's work, that literally opened up my perspective. You don't have to go to Puttaparthi. You don't have to do Swami's work in Puttaparthi. That's one of the things he made a point later, because I want to quit everything I was doing in Los Angeles and go and work in Swami's hospital. He said, no, it's not necessary. All are my patients. You work in Puttaparthi, you work in Los Angeles, it's the same for me. They're all my patients. See, this is what is, you know, universality of, you know, Swami. The thing that we do not understand is Swami's grace is always there for us. Just for the asking. You know, it is there, but we don't ask. Some people in one of the centers in the United States, and the lady had a very interesting question. She said, Doctor, I had an emergency the other day and I had to call 911 and then think of Swami. And I said, no, that's not the way it should be. They're not mutually exclusive. They're mutually complementary. You can think of Sai Ram and still call 911. That's one of the things Swami tells us. You don't think of me enough. You don't ask me the right things. That is what education is. That's what becoming a better person. What to ask from Swami and not to forget about him. He is our best friend. Maybe he's the only friend all of us have. Because all our other relationships are at a worldly level. Yes, you need a wife, no question about it. You have children. But really, honestly, the only friend you have is Swami, because of his most unselfish love. And again, the corollary to that is what he tells. The only asset he has is love. And we are all shareholders in that love.